All right, and we are live. Good evening, everybody. I know it's 8:30 Central Time, and obviously a little bit later if you're on Eastern, and if you're in another part of the world, I have not quite memorized all the time zones yet, but I am getting there. One day we'll do the Larry Sparks time zone quiz, and you can ask me what time it is. I'll probably be wrong, but I'll try. But hey, nice to have you guys on. We had a little graphic up I shared about what we're going to be talking about this evening. And this is a very important message. I'm so excited in just a moment to bring my guest on because a lot of the community here that listen to me and follow me, listen, there's extraordinary things that you feel like you are called to do. In fact, I can't think of another generation that has had so much vision, that has had so much promise, that has had so much drive to go do something. Well, drive, yes. Excitement. Can I say that? We've had a lot of excitement. We've had a lot of vision. We've had a lot of promise. And then here's the reality, though. And this is why I'm so excited about having Alyson Van Hooser on tonight. Please track with me, okay? Because in order for us to get to the places we want to get, it's not going to happen if we just sit around. I always tell people this. If I published a book, let me tell you this. If I published a book that was called How to Get Everything You Want in Life while sitting on a couch, eating Krispy Kreme donuts and watching soap operas, that book would be a bestseller. It absolutely would, because we want everything just to come out of the sky. Hey, everybody. Well, we've got some people, blessings from Tennessee, watching from Arizona, upstate New York. Let us know where you're watching from. And let me know if you are friends or followers of my guest, Alyson Van Hooser. I'm bringing her on right now. 1, 2, 3. Alyson, thank you for joining me.
Everybody. Thank you so much.
This is so fun. Again, now I got to tell the story, Alyson, about how I read your book because, number one, for those of you who don't know, I'm the publisher for Destiny Image. We are under the banner of something called Norai Media Group, and we have another wonderful publishing house under that banner called Sound Wisdom, publishing amazing business books. I mean, doing the Napoleon Hill books. I mean, fantastic stuff. So I get those books sent to me regularly every month. Now, you could look in the back. Can't see it all right now, but I've got books. One of these days, I'm convinced my wife is going to buy me like a trailer, and you might see me living outside with all of my books. But we're praying that doesn't happen. But anyway, I got this book called Level Up from Alyson Van Hooser. I started to read it because I really sense that in my own field, I know what I know about publishing in my arena. I wanted to read some books about personal development, particularly in goal setting, reaching goals, because like all of you guys, I've got a lot of goals. You've got a lot of goals, lots of promises, lots of things you want to get done in life. But the reality is there is a certain amount of frustration I think a lot of people carry because we've got a lot of things we want to do and they're not happening. I read this book. Alyson, this is your first book. Congratulations. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to say this multiple times throughout this broadcast. You guys need to go on Amazon and buy this book because this, I believe, is a key ingredient to get you from the place where you are right now to where you want to be in seeing things actually come to pass, fulfilled. And I'm going to let Alyson take it away. But the whole point I love about this, Alyson, you remind us to take responsibility, to take ownership over the things that we want to do in life. But before all that, before people are like, oh, yeah, well, Alyson can talk about that. She is successful. She's a speaker. She's writing books. I want you to talk a little bit about your humble beginnings because, my goodness, what a story you have. I'm turning it over to you.
Sure. So you mentioned that there was someone here from Tennessee. I don't know if anybody can tell from my accent or not, but I'm from the same area, Kentucky, just a little bit north of Tennessee. So I grew up in a really small town in Kentucky. I grew up without a mother. She left whenever I was really young. And I grew up with a father who struggled with addiction for still my entire life. And he didn't work and we lived on government assistance. You know, we would get a check at the beginning of the month and it would oftentimes, because of what he struggled with, be gone a couple weeks into it. And we would be struggling just to make ends meet for the next several weeks until we would get that next, that next amount of money from the government for food, for electricity, for water. And there was many times where we were getting food from churches around our community and going to the neighbor's house to use the bathroom. And that's all I knew when I was growing up. I was a happy kid, but I knew life with a mother who wasn't present and a dad who just had his own struggles. So my father ended up leaving whenever I was 13 years old. And from there, I lived with multiple friends and family. And when I was 18, I moved out on my own. I've worked since I was 14 and put myself through college, high school and college. And now I have been able to navigate the professional world and hold many different leadership positions, including even in my community. I served as a city councilwoman when I was in my 20s, and I have 3 kids, a husband, and one on the way. So when it came to this book, I believe that every person has a story to share that can help someone else. And the overall story of my life is you have to take ownership, and that means taking action to make things happen for yourself. You can have ideas of what should be or what you think you could do or should do, but ultimately, if you don't own it, if you don't act on it, if you don't put in the work to make it happen, it won't. And so that's the story, the overall story behind Level Up.
Well, and it's interesting because, again, the cool thing about reading the book is people, you write like you speak, number one. Number two, you really let people into a lot of details of your story. And I'll brag on you for a minute because, folks, we need to get some grit. We need to actually be like, okay, how serious am I about actually taking ownership? All right, I was going to share the story, like you're talking about how I put myself through college. I remember I just read about, you'll tell it better than I am. You would literally drive to that, you would park your car and sleep in your car. You got to tell that story. That's kind of wild.
I'll tell that story. So I waited tables through high school and college. You can make good money if you're good at connecting with people waiting tables. And so that's what I did all through college. But I lived an hour away from where I went to school. And so I would get off work late at night, and I had the choice. I could go home and sleep for 5 or 6 hours, wake up and get ready and go to class. But at that point in my life, I was taking so many hours with school, working 40 plus hours for work, and I was exhausted. So then if I sat down, I was knocked out. Like, there was no alarm getting me up. It was not happening. So I had to make the decision. My ultimate goal was to graduate from college and to do it early because my husband wouldn't marry me until I graduated college. So I wanted to do it early. And so I crammed in the classes, and I had to figure out how to get to class, how to not accidentally not wake up. And so I didn't have a lot of options, but the solution that I came up with at the time was to go ahead and drive to Murray, Kentucky. I'm a Murray State racer. And I would go to Murray and I would park in the JCPenney's parking lot. It was located sort of in front of the school, and it was well lit. And I just thought, if I can sleep here for a few hours, hopefully the Lord will protect me and nothing will happen. And when the sun comes up, that's going to be enough. And I would be on edge enough from being in a parking lot that I would wake up, and I would wake up and I'd drive down the road to CVS and brush my teeth, throw my hair up, change my clothes, and I'd go to class and come home and do it all over again, because ultimately nobody was going to give me a free pass.
Yeah.
Just because I had some tough circumstances in my life. I had to step up and do something about it. And maybe looking back, I wouldn't want my kid sleeping in a parking lot. But dang it, at the same time, you've got to do what you've got to do to make it happen, to get where you want to go. And you got to find a way, no excuses.
And we are not advocating for you to go out and sleep in a parking lot somewhere. However, what I do admire about the story, and that's why I had her share it, is because, Alison had 2 choices. You guys who are watching, you have 2 choices. Either we can just live a life and I want you to talk about this, Alison, because you talk about it in the book, but really, I think you use the language of you're either a have or an owner. And I want you to share about that, because the reality is this: either we can just take the hand that's dealt to us, and then life does not become something that we make it or we choose. It becomes whatever happens, or whatever comes our way. And if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. Or we can actually do what Alison talks about in this book and actually take ownership over the journey. So I really believe tonight you guys are going to get just a wonderful dose of encouragement. And, I understand, listen, in the 21st century, sometimes when it comes to the word hustle and let's move, sometimes it gets annoying, to be honest, because people it's like they're trying to make stuff happen when it's like, okay, calm down a little bit. But sadly, the opposite is I'm just going to sit around and wait, I'm going to wait for something to happen, or I'm going to complain about all the bad stuff that happened. And we're not trivializing that, but for goodness sake, you have a choice. You have a choice to actually rise up in spite of those things and make something of your life. So the good news is, Alison, could you share what is the difference between somebody who haves or owns? I love this concept.
Thank you. That's actually one of the things that I've been getting the most feedback on from people who've already read the book is I didn't realize I was a have. And I need to make what we call the owner shift into taking control of what I'm doing, not just what I'm thinking or saying or feeling. I said that there's two groups of people. There are the haves and the owners. Most people are the haves. So you may have a goal. You may have a vision of what you think should happen or life should look like. You may have an idea of where you want to go. But ultimately, it doesn't happen for the people who don't choose to take ownership to make it happen. I believe, and I can see it in my own life, that you can look around and see the doors that are being opened for you, and you can take action to move forward and go in the right direction, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, even when you're unsure. But ultimately, most people don't do that. We sit back and we say, yeah, but what if someone else could do it better? But what if I just need to wait a little longer till I have more confidence or more money or more connections or more education? But I would say that that you can overcome all of that by action. We deal with actions in the book that young professionals should take in order to rise up in the workplace. But just in your personal life, there are actions you can take to take care of yourself, to take care of the people around you. And the thing that I like to say is concentrate on the next right move. Like, you can get really overwhelmed trying to do all of these different big things. But if you've laid down the law, and we can talk about that if you want, and have your priorities in order, you know exactly what you're supposed to do, take ownership of that and do the next right thing. We're supposed to be the hands and feet. Get moving. Do something. Don't sit and wait for someone else to make things happen, because it may not. That's what haves do. Owners take ownership and make things happen.
Well, and again, I think we go right on into the conversation of what it means to lay down the law, because the reality is this, none of this is some sort of magical stuff. It's just really understanding that you actually have ownership over what happens in your life. And I mean, Alison, you could easily, all of us, I'm sure, in some way or the other, we could try to make excuses based on the stuff that has happened to us. And the reality is, you are so relatable, because listen, you got dealt a really rough hand growing up. Let me ask you this. I wasn't planning on asking this. We'll get into the lay down the law thing in a minute, but what would you say to somebody, and again, you have it all in your book, for somebody who has been dealt some rough hands in life, who has had some difficult circumstances thrown at them? How would you just encourage them for a moment? Because I'm sure folks who are watching, that would be totally relevant.
The first thing I would say is that you're not alone. None of us are experiencing struggles that no one else in the history of Earth have ever experienced before. someone has been in our place. And the encouragement that I would just share with whoever's listening tonight is that, sort of what I said at the beginning, each of us have a story to tell that can help someone else. And so whether you have overcome something and it's in the past, or if you're in the middle of that right now, who is there in your life that you can share your story with of how you got through something, or maybe share the pain you're currently going through, which would allow someone else an opportunity to minister to you. I think that nothing happens by coincidence. I think that we can use the things that happen in our life and the people that come in and out of our life in order to do good work. And so I would just encourage you in that way to use your experiences to help other people.
That's such a good word of encouragement. And again, Alison, what I love about this is really your story. And you talked about the power of your story. And I do want to encourage you guys, for those of you who have overcome things, be very vocal about telling your story, because there are ears that need to hear it. In the same way, I want to encourage some of those of you who are struggling right now and who are just feel like, oh man, it's just been rough. I don't know how I can get through this. I don't know how I can ever make something out of my life. Well, I would encourage you to read books and listen to people like Alison. Search out people who have gone through what you've gone through, because like Alison said, it's 100% correct. There's somebody in the history of planet Earth that has either gone what you've gone through, or oftentimes much worse. And when you hear a story, an overcoming story, that motivates you. It tells you it's possible. Alison, what does it mean to lay down the law? I mean, I'm doing that. It's not violent, but
lay down the law.
Exactly. But I love that concept that you shared about. We were chatting a little bit about that before we went on. When you say lay down the law, what does that mean in the context we're talking about?
So it can be used in multiple areas of your life, but specifically in this book, I'm talking about the individual, you, the person who's watching this. When I say lay down the law, I use the word law because when laws are broken in the world we know today, bad things happen. We go to jail, or you can list the consequences out whenever we break the law. And that's how serious I take this. And you could even say it's simply prioritizing what you want to do in this life, or what you are going to do in this life. So lay down the law is 3 parts. Number 1, who are you? So defining, who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? What am I willing to do and not willing to do? And defining that, putting your stake in the ground and saying, this is it. This is the law. And that means that everything going forward in your life, if it doesn't line up with that, then it doesn't happen. You don't do it. So number 1 is defining who you are. Number 2 is, what do you want? And this is a really simple process. After you define who you are, the second part is, what do you want? What are you trying to accomplish in this life? And this lay down the law process was probably the most freeing thing that I did. And I didn't realize that I was doing it as I was growing up, really prioritizing what I wanted and getting rid of the things that I didn't. But as I became a mother and as I started getting involved in my community, it became really easy to become overwhelmed. And I had to keep revisiting laying down the law because my priorities would get out of order. So we've got, who are you? What do you want? And then the third and final piece of laying down the law is, how are you going to get it? That's your action step. What's the next right thing to do to get me closer to where I want to go? And then making sure that that step always aligns with who you are, what you believe. That process is simple. It's something that I use personally, and we use it with our 3 kids to help them navigate life as little kids. It's a simple process, and I would encourage you all, if nothing else, we've got a dry erase board in our bedroom. I think I might even mention that in the book, and it's written out as far as our marriage. We do this for all aspects of our life, but who are we? What do we want? How are we going to get that? And that third part is where leveling up and taking ownership of making your goals a reality. That's where that happens. And
that's so important to have that kind of clarity, because that's always our reference point.
Yes.
Otherwise we just get carried along by life. And the reality is, there's a lot of people who let life happen to them, but you kind of have to actually be somebody that happens to life, as opposed to letting it just move you around. So I love that, because Alison, those are the non-negotiables, who you are, what you want. But I want to focus, in our last couple of minutes here, how you get there. And because oftentimes I do feel like this generation is so excited, so enthusiastic about big things and doing great things and accomplishing amazing things. And that's fantastic. But I also feel like there's this sense of frustration, saying, oh man, I have all these great ambitions, but nothing's happening. And why is it not happening? Well, I think it's often the absence of the plan of how to get there. And that's honestly why I'm reading this book, because I want to read practical books on how to see goals come to pass. So in our last few minutes together, for people who feel like, okay, I've kind of defined who I am, what I want, all that, but what would you tell somebody in terms of what are some good steps to seeing your goals come to pass?
So the first thing I would say is developing your skill of adaptability. And we talk about that in the book, because I think I passionately believe that nobody is a self-made person. Nobody really accomplishes anything completely on their own. It's because of relationships we've built. You hear the word, it takes a village. I say in the book, it takes a village to make a success. And so no matter what lane you're trying to navigate right now, it's probably going to take more than just you. And so a big portion of the book is focused on relating to other people. And I think that, that's the real crux of how I got to where I am, because as a little kid who was struggling, I was watching everybody who was taking action that was getting them where they wanted to go, and then taking action that was getting them nowhere near where they wanted or needed to be. And so I figured out that I had to become the person. I had to make the choice, and we all have this ability to adapt. Now, I'll be real clear. You never compromise who you are. Yeah. But if you need to change things like how you say something, or when you say something, when you do something, in order to better relate to people, to better communicate with people, to better, keep the door open, especially in a world where we have so much diversity. You have to be the person who can adapt in order to meet people where they are. Because I think about, you and I are having this conversation. We wouldn't be having this conversation if I didn't figure out how to talk to older adult. Not that you're older. You're not older.
Oh, okay.
My only point is that you have to learn to talk to people who are like you, who are not like you, who you like, who you do not like, who you agree with, who you do not agree with. And you have to figure out how to do that well. And people are motivated by different things. We are all shaped by different experiences. And so when you're talking about what's the next right action, what could people do in order to take the next right step forward, I would say focus on learning more about the people around you. If you know where you want to go, then figure out the people that are there and learn what you can about them, how they think, how they operate, whether it's whatever generation that they're in, whatever environment that they grew up in, whatever experiences that they've been through. Learn those things and figure out how to communicate and relate to those people. That's what I would say would be the biggest thing, because, in the book we deal with things like drama and conflict and giving excuses, but ultimately all of that boils down to your ability to connect with people.
Well, again, with our last maybe 5 minutes, though, I would say another thing that you talk about in the book that will really help people accomplish the goals. I think one thing that takes so many people out between their dream and their destination is failure. And I love the concept that you have in here, chapter 12, fail up. We're talking about level up. Well, we're talking about fail up. I think, Alison, you tell me what you think. I think so many people don't even move towards their goals out of fear of failure. I mean, would you say that's true? I mean, it seems like a very crippling thing to people.
I would absolutely agree. And I think failure too in people's minds may not even be like this. I may be a complete failure, but it may be, I may not be perfect. I may fail by not being perfect. So you're afraid to go talk to someone. You're afraid to write the book or stand on the stage or do whatever it is that you feel like you're supposed to do because you won't be perfect at it. And I think about, different music artists, how they evolve over time. Their first CD is usually never as good as, their fifth or sixth CD, but you have to start. You just have to start. We're all going to mess up. I say if you mess up, you need to fess up. You need to own it if you do. But when you do that, you can create trust and respect. But we're all going to mess up. We're all forgiving when we handle it the right way. Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try.
Wow, that's a good word of encouragement right there. And I love the fact that you said CD, because that does place you and I in the same generation.
Okay, there we go.
No, I remember cassette tapes. So I guess I am getting ancient, but but yes, I love that though. I honestly, that's the book is full of gems because the book is full of your life. And you've learned a lot, but I do encourage you, as we finish up here, for those of you, I really sense that was a good place for us to conclude, but really a place to encourage people. I really believe that there's a lot of people, you're not even moving towards your goal because you're afraid of failure. But I love what Alison she says, it is possible for a mess up to help you go up. I mean, could you share, as we wind up, as we land the plane here, but could you share, Alison, maybe one or two, whatever comes to your mind, of an example where you failed, but it actually kind of helped you get to the next level?
Sure, absolutely. I'll sort of share one of the examples I gave in the book. I worked at a bank whenever I was just freshly out of college, and I worked with a lot of people that had a lot more experience than I did. And I, long story short, left the bank unlocked one night. And it was my responsibility to make sure that bank was completely locked up. Long story short, I did it. I come in the next day. The CEO discovered the bank was left unlocked, and he sent out an email to everybody in the organization saying, this is completely unacceptable. I don't know who did it. And he went on and on and on. And in that moment, as I got to my desk and I read that email that everybody else had gotten too, I thought, I've got to own this. Everybody's going to be wondering who did it. I've got to own it. And so I hit reply all and told everyone, it was me. It was my mistake. I completely agree. It should not happen again. Next time it's my responsibility. I'm going to make notes and take action to make sure it doesn't happen again. And what happened from that experience is, as I moved up in leadership roles within the bank, there was one specific woman who had 20 plus years experience on me in the organization. She came to me. She was highly respected. And she came to me and said, I will never forget the day that you told the entire organization that you messed up. And you owned it fast as soon as you got to work. And she said, I've had so much respect for you. I wasn't sure about you when you first came in here at 23 years old. But now I see you're the real deal. And so I earned her trust and her respect there and was able to move into a leadership position where I could take her even further in her career. So there's power in failing the right way.
Wow. And you know what you shared, and folks, for those of you who are listening, this is a great way for us to end, because what she just shared, I really want that to sink in. And Alison may not have even grasped the gravity of it, but it's like you had that's a big deal. That's a serious thing. You owned it. And I think a lot of us, I've had some major boo-boos on my end as well. So we've all been there. But I think so many of us are afraid of making something like that. But here's what I found fascinating in you sharing that story is you did that. You weren't fired. For one, you advanced. I mean,
yes.
So I think that's amazing. And again, I can't promise people that you won't be fired if you make a mistake, but I really do believe, like Alison, what you encourage, that should really demolish this fear in our mind. Oh my goodness, what if I make a mistake? There's people, I mean, I really think people are to be applauded and admired for just being out there doing something. And you know what? If you fail and you mess up and you fess up and you keep going, like, there's no failure in that. Failure is only failure when we allow it to be final, when we allow it to identify us and we actually identify ourselves as a failure. Alison, that's such a good word of encouragement. So many people watching and listening. I would love you to just share whatever closing remarks that you want to share. But first, I do want to encourage people. This book, Level Up. I have been reading it again. I'm not reading it because I have to. I'm reading it because I really need it for where I am right now. Alison is an amazing coach, communicator. She's the real deal because she's been through what she's talking about. She's not writing as a theorist. She's writing as a practitioner. So Level Up. You can go to Amazon now. But Alison, just whatever final thoughts you want to share, and then let people know where they can connect with you further.
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Larry, to just be with you and be with your people. I wrote Level Up because of years of the Lord just opening doors and saying, this is what I wanted you to do. So it is my hope that if you feel the urge to go purchase this book, that with the stories in there that I tell, that you are touched and that you are encouraged to take action in your own journey. That's where my heart is. That's my heart behind the book. Please, I'd love to connect with you, talk with you all more. I'm on Facebook. You can look me up, Alyson Van Hooser. I'm a keynote speaker and leadership trainer. I'm also on Instagram at Alyson Van Hooser. Thank you again, Larry.
Absolutely, Alison. Thank you so much for joining. Again, the book is Level Up. I believe it's going to really encourage you. And again, the goal of this, why I did this whole broadcast with Alison, I think the strategies and the tips in this book will help you get from the place to where you have a dream and a desire to actually seeing it fulfilled and come to pass. The good news is that you are the one, I am the one who determine whether or not that happens at the end of the day. So thank you guys for joining us. Always a joy to come and just share the amazing people that we have in our community. And again, Alison's extended family in the Sound Wisdom community there. So Alison, thank you again for joining us. It was a joy to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night, you guys.
Good night.